Good evening. I'm calling the Wednesday, July 8th, 2020 Economic Development Commission meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Tonight's Economic Development Commission meeting will be held both in person and virtually using Zoom. As Vice Chair, I'll be leading the EDC meeting, and the public is welcome to participate when invited throughout the meeting. If attendees experience audio problems, we suggest you leave the meeting and then rejoin. This has fixed the issue in the past. Additional instructions on how to participate are posted online at burnsvillemn.gov in the public meeting calendar. As usual, tonight's meeting will be available for viewing on BCTV and the city's website. If you're unable to participate this evening and would like to submit public testimony, I encourage you to email your comments to city staff or mail your comments directly to City Hall. You may participate in the meeting tonight online by going to zoom.us/join and typing in meeting ID 976-626-88378. Once you're logged into the meeting, please use the chat feature to tell the moderator which item you'd like to speak to. You may also call into the meeting at 651-372-8299. Please note there may be a slight delay due to differences in technology. If speaking by phone, please mute your computer since there will be a delay. First item for business tonight is the adoption of the agenda. Did everybody receive a copy of the agenda? Yep. Can I get a motion for the adoption of tonight's agenda?
So moved. Approved.
Second? All right, there's a motion and a second. Tonight, slight differences is Regina Dean will call the roll for each one of the motions.
Commissioner Folkstead.
Aye.
Commissioner Kuplick.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cliveder.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmitz. Commissioner Lefebvre.
Aye.
Commissioner Fitchett.
And get some of this information out to you.
All right, very good. Motion passes. Next, it's been a little while, but we have the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was March 11, 2020. Do we have any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the March 11th, 2020 EDC meeting?
Motion to approve the minutes.
I second. Go ahead. I'll second.
Motion and a second. All right.
Roll call. Commissioner Folkstead.
Aye.
Commissioner Kuplick.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cliveder.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmitz. Commissioner Lefebvre.
Lefebvre, as in ask me a favor. Aye.
Commissioner Fitchett.
And those numbers seem to be.
Excellent. Motion passes and the minutes were approved. Next, we have a new member on the Economic Development Commission recently appointed, and I'd invite Assistant Community Development Director Dean to administer the oath of office to our newest commissioner, Laura Schmitz.
Hi, Laura. I'm going to ask you to repeat after me. Typically, we have you raise your right hand, and then I will send you the document after, so that you can either mail back or drop off in person. Right here. If you can see where the camera is. Okay. I, Laura Schmitz, do solemnly swear.
I, Laura Schmitz, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And the state of Minnesota.
And the state of Minnesota.
And faithfully will discharge the duties as a member of the Burnsville Economic Development Commission.
And faithfully discharge the duties as a member of the Burnsville Economic Development Commission.
of the City of Burnsville
of the City of Burnsville
in the County of Dakota and State of Minnesota,
in the County of Dakota and State of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Welcome, Laura. That's it.
Laura, welcome. Excellent. Next, I believe we have City Manager Melanie Mesco-Lee to discuss the item number 4 on the agenda, the CARES Act Business Grant Concept.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for having me here tonight. I guess I get to drive this now. All right, so tonight we have before the Commission discussion and feedback on a grant program. A little bit of background information is that there is a federal act called the CARES Act for which money was allocated to states and communities over $500,000 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Within the state of Minnesota, Ramsey County and Hennepin County received direct allocations, and then the state of Minnesota received about $814 million that was to be dispersed as the state determined to cities, counties, and townships under 500,000. The legislature recently made a decision on how those funds were going to be allocated. For the city of Burnsville, our portion was about $4.7 million. Now, those funds have been certified and we have received them, and we have until November 15th to expend those funds for eligible uses. There is some flexibility in how those funds can be allocated from the grant program perspective. There is little guidance at this point, so we are looking for kind of broad guidance from some of our state partners, but at this time, we're looking for feedback from our commission on some parameters for a grant program. The state received CARES Act dollars. They're allocating about $60 million for a small business grant program. That application period closed last week. Dakota County is considering a small business grant program. They discussed the parameters yesterday at their meeting, and their CDA will be discussing it again at next week's meeting. And our city council reviewed some parameters last night. We got their feedback, but we also are looking for the commission's feedback. Within that $4.7 million, we could use it for a number of uses, including paying for direct COVID-19 related costs. So the grant program would not be the entire $4.7 million. The council has not given direction on what dollar amount they might be looking for, but at this point, they're thinking about $10,000 per business is the range that we're typically seeing with other programs. We also, at this point, don't know the amount of interest with these programs. Because of there are a number of different similar programs, many of these grant parameters are being structured so that if you receive county grant dollars, you would be eligible to receive city grant dollars. That being said, we were able to find some information about some of our businesses from DEED. We received this earlier today. So within Burnsville, if we look at the zip codes of 55337 and 55306, about 55% of our businesses are between 1 and 4 employees. If we add from 1 to 9 employees, that increases to about 75% of our businesses. Up to 19 employees, that's about 88% of our businesses. And if we move up to 50 employees, that captures about 95% of our businesses. Now, from a point of context, the state DEED program has a threshold of no more than 50 employees to be eligible for this program. The county's program has a threshold of no more than 20 employees to be eligible for this program. So you can see that even with those thresholds, it gets to a vast majority of our businesses. Some of the basic qualifications for this program, as we look at other programs that have kind of been framed out at this point, and that we're asking for consideration, it would be locally owned and operated. So Burnsville-based brick and mortar in Burnsville. Demonstrate that the business has been adversely affected by COVID-19, hasn't received state or county CARES grants, and still be in business. So now we have noted that nonprofits can receive a direct allocation or be a part of the program. That is an allowable expense. What we understand is Dakota County is looking to develop a program that would take some of their allocation and provide it to nonprofits throughout the county. Again, they're still working on the parameters of their business program and their nonprofit program. So with that as background and I'm happy to answer questions at any point. We laid out some discussion questions for the council. I'm just gonna walk through them real quickly. Whether home-based businesses would be allowed, whether the commission would want to consider types of business such as customer-facing, thinking about maximum or minimum number of employees. I talked about a little earlier that the state and county programs do have a maximum number of employee standard. Is there a desire to consider a maximum income? Or priority for minority, women, veteran-owned or operated businesses? Within the state program, they have their $60 million allocated. Within that $60 million, they have subcategories of preference. So half of the money is intended for greater Minnesota, half the money is, that $60 million is intended for Metro. Within those, it's carved out for certain priorities for minority, women, veteran-owned or operated businesses. Commissioner Kleibiter?
Nope, that answered it. Thank you.
Some other considerations are whether national or corporate chains would be ineligible. And that is really what we're seeing is common. Those national or corporate chains, there are other mechanisms for economic relief. This would not exclude locally owned franchises.
So if somebody in Burnsville owns the McDonald's, they could apply as that.
Yes, Commissioner, indeed, yes. But if it was a corporately owned McDonald's, that wouldn't fall under the, generally these small business grant programs. Is there any interest in excluding certain types of businesses, such as gambling, tobacco, vaping, adult uses, guns? Is there a desire to exclude passive businesses, such as real estate, lobbying, business to business? Again, these are what we're seeing are included in some programs as being excluded business types. I mentioned brick and mortar, and a desire for it to be in business a minimum amount of time. What we are seeing is that the business should have been operational by a certain date, right? No later, it need to be in operation by December 30th, 2019, or by, February 1st, 2020, those kinds of standards. So with that, I will share with you some of the feedback we heard from the council, and then certainly welcome any questions or feedback you may have for me. The council talked about this last night, as I mentioned. One of the items that they indicated some conceptual support was home-based businesses. And so that's something that we'll be taking back, but I also welcome your feedback. They also asked for us to look into whether educational or resiliency funding could be an eligible expense, meaning if a business has to change their business model to remain vibrant, remain vital in light of the challenges that COVID-19 pandemic have laid upon us, is there a business model, is there a grant program that we can put in place to help support that? We're looking into seeing if that is even an eligible cost. Another part of that, kind of a two-pronged approach, is would we be able to provide a business with a business coach or a consultant to help them with some of that modeling or business resiliency going forward. So those are some of the things those are some of the things the council asked us to look into, and so we are going to be reporting back on that. With that, I'm gonna stop and see what questions or comments or feedback you may have for me.
Commissioner Anderson?
When you talk about home-based business, is there a requirement that they be licensed in the city? Forget about COVID-19, but do they have to be licensed if they're a legitimate home business?
One of the parameters that we had discussed was it would need to be in good standing, so regulatory good standing. If it's required to be licensed, I would imagine that would be something to consider. We did not get to that level of specificity, however.
Yeah, to me, somebody could create, well, I was in business at home, you know, at this point in time, and there could be a lot of fuzziness to some of that type thing in a home-based business.
Indeed.
So something that they could prove that they were legitimately operating.
Yeah, I think some of the other programs that I've seen out there is they really go back to when the company received a tax ID number from the IRS, because that communication from the IRS has a date on it, as well as when they filed with the Minnesota Secretary of State's office. That would also have a date on it. Some of the other ways to prove if they're operating are a little fuzzier, but at least if they took those steps, there are, in the state's eyes, they are operating as a business at that point in time, I think.
Commissioner Folk said I have seen that in other models, so yes.
Yep. My own reservation on that, a lot of Schedule C businesses operate under their own social security number. So they don't get a tax ID number. It's not necessary.
Correct, it's not necessary. Oftentimes, though, if they are operating as a business, they'd have some sort of maybe an assumed name with the Secretary of State's office, or they could be a single-member LLC that would be filed as well. Commissioner Claviter?
Nailed it. Nice job. This whole 10 discussion items list, there's a lot of things I have notes in here, but instead of going into this whole thing, I'm gonna try to focus on the solution that I liked best was about the consultants. And I know that's hinging on the idea of if we can use the money for the consultants. But if we get consultants in there, a lot of these discussions we're gonna have about, does this work? What about this? What about that? The consultants sit down. First rule is you have to be willing to meet with a consultant in order to be eligible with the money. Once a consultant signs off on you and says you have a viable business plan, you will work, and X amount of dollars should get you there. Now we have an understanding of how much money they need and if it's gonna work from an expert. That takes a lot of these other questions, seems to take them out of the equation.
Just checking in, do we have any questions from the commissioners via Zoom at all?
As of now, there are not.
Okay, sounds good. We do have
Let's go.
Commissioner Fichette.
And there are a myriad of several of these relationships across the board.
Like there may be set aside funds for.
So now we're to our breakout session.
What they do.
With this information that probably is a bit counterintuitive, as well as some of
Mr.
the
Fichette, is it two people?
I want us to really think about what specific ways would you and your use to
Commissioner
utilize
Fichette?
school
Commissioner
consumption
Fichette, are you able to mute any other audio that may be going on
Is
the?
that much better?
Yes,
Better?
significantly better. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the point I was trying to ask was, these are businesses who have an operation, correct? This is not money that's set aside to create a new business. This is money that, for a business who's been in operation, who needs to maybe change in order to remain in business, right? So I just wanted to make that clarification because it sounded like we were talking about money to use for a new business to open using consultants versus a business that was currently open and then changing to remain viable.
Right, I think the discussion has been around existing businesses and possibly using a consultant for business model changes. But, right, I think there's general consensus that it's for existing business use from the commission. So that's definitely. One thing is, as I look as I look at this in particular, I guess making a consultant available as a resource may be a good idea if that's something that we can wrangle. Making it a requirement might be difficult, just based on some of the things I've been seeing. Speed is likely more important in these grants than likely anything else, and the ability to harness enough consultants in a fashion that would be helpful might be difficult, especially with the need to move the money quickly into the local economy here. Commissioner Cleveter.
One problem with having, if we go around the consulting, we run into a lot of rule structures that are going to come about. And some of these will get adopted from our, this 10 list proposal. I assume some will get adopted. One thing we could run into is, say billboards aren't allowed on the list. You're not allowed to apply for a billboard. We could run into a fairness issue, a legal issue with fairness, and we could be seeing a day in court over it. It is, there's fairness practice laws that would in play here too.
Yeah, there is. I guess my thought is if we have a consultant and they are the arbiter of if somebody gets a grant or not, then we run into the same issue.
It's an equal platform for everybody to talk and get their proposal out there and then decide on a case-by-case basis, so it can't look like a general blanket of discrimination to a certain business type.
Yeah, yeah, you can't discriminate. I would say. Yeah.
And that's one way to alleviate from any kind of ideas that we're discriminating against a certain business.
Vice Chair Volkstead, I just want to interject. Commissioner Schmitz would like to add to the discussion.
Okay. Commissioner Schmitz, welcome.
Hi, yes, thank you. I wanted to add just some additional thoughts a bit beyond the idea of whether we try to coordinate or suggest working with a consultant or working toward viable business plans. Some of the things on this list that concerned me or really popped to me was definitely that there are more home-based businesses in the current economy than ever before. And so, yes, we do think about maybe our brick and mortar places that we drive by, but there are 100 businesses that you drove by as you drove through your neighborhood that really are significant, viable businesses in other non-coronavirus times. And so I would hope that as a commission and as a city, we don't lose sight of them just because they're not in the heart of the city or near Burnsville Center. And the other piece I wanted to focus on or bring some attention to is not to sleep on those business-to-business entities, because if the restaurants are failing, then they can't hire their marketers and they can't pay their accountants and they can't keep paying their business consultants or advisors or their copywriters for material. And so even though the failure of the restaurant feels really important and we want to preserve that, there are a dozen other reliant entities and all of those employees that are relying on that too. And so I hope we won't forget about those business to business people in our community.
Thank you. One other thing. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Anderson. Go ahead.
I'll wait.
Okay. One other thing is looking just a general, two things actually. The employee cap, I think the employee cap, if we look at something like the county at 20, is likely pretty small for some of these businesses that are most affected. Restaurants seem to have a lot of employees really easily with servers and various staff in back of house that we don't necessarily see. So maybe 50 or even 100 might be good. And then is there a way that we can allow somebody to receive this grant and if deemed worthy by the county, receive the county grant and the state grant? It's been my experience with the different CARES Act programs that as long as they're not requesting funds for the same exact use, i.e. payroll for the month of June, that they can layer the different grant programs. And I would encourage us to take a look at writing it in a way that they could do the same thing with the Burnsville program. Commissioner Anderson.
When we talk about the consultant, I think there may be a in-between area where the consultant could help develop a questionnaire that each business could fill out and, you know, pointing out the aspects of their business and what's their COVID-19 costs are, so that the consultant might not have to meet with each business, but could lay out a parameter that would help us judge all businesses. And then if there was a need to meet with, you know, some of the smaller organizations, then the consultant might be helpful there too, but to meet with everybody might be difficult.
Before anybody else speaks, we have two commissioners online that would like to add additional comment. Commissioner LaFever and Commissioner Schmitz.
Commissioner LaFever.
Thank you. So I want to just comment. First of all, I do agree that many restaurants have more than 10 employees. However, we're talking about grants of $10,000 here, which really applies mostly to these small businesses. You know, for a company that has 50 employees or 30 employees, 10,000 doesn't go very far. And I think the other thing too is that those that received a PP loan, we've talked about, are ineligible, I believe, but also if they, or maybe they're eligible, but those that received an EIDL loan should be ineligible because they've been able to access additional funding on top of the PPP. So just food for thought on that.
Very good. And Commissioner Fichette, I believe you had your hand up as well.
I did, and this is kind of offbeat of where we were, what we're talking about at present, but it's going back to that list of things to chat about or discuss that was presented earlier. And I just wanted to make a comment about businesses who are not brick and mortar, but home businesses. I think the direction that our economy is going now, where people are finding out that they're able to do, they're able to have a viable business from home. That's instead of what we've done in yesteryear, where it has to be a brick and mortar. I think considering what that home business is there can be many services that can be offered out of the home. And if we're talking about up to 20 employees, that might not be a business that would have to otherwise spend money on a brick and mortar for a lease or mortgage. So I just wanted to comment on that because I didn't know how the rest of the commissioners felt about that, but something to really strongly consider now that COVID-19 is hitting. We can find out we can work from home a little better.
Yeah, there may be a evolving trend towards home-based or non-brick and mortar. And what does that look like for some of these? For sure, definitely. Commissioner Cleveter.
Back to your point about doubling down on these loans. I do like the idea because it could help people definitely immensely. I would just like to see it added a note there that if you've already received a loan, you go to the back of the line. People who have not received any kind of assistance would be prioritized in that scenario.
Makes sense.
Good. Commissioner Kuplick?
I'm gonna take a different angle on the grants and the loans. I think we should leave it wide open. The reason being that most of the PPE loans, if they got in line already, they've spent that money. This is kind of the second tranche, the way I look at it, because the federal money, even the EIDL loans, which are as a grant technically, $10,000 for these small businesses, they've spent that too. By the time we get this thing rolled out, it might be August to get it all figured out and everything. So, and I definitely wouldn't put people in the back of the line because they're not available. So, a couple other things. Home business, definitely. Transitional cost to contemporize your business model, totally in favor of. Consultant, I'd make it optional, not mandatory, because I've worked a lot of consultants and some are good and some are not so good. And I don't want to put that control feature in place. Minority, I think it'd be nice to earmark some degree of value. That's why I've seen a lot of these grants is they'll say 20% designated for minority businesses, so that's earmarked. And if that's not used, then it's allowed to be used by everyone else. And last thing is liquor businesses, I think they should be in. I saw the list of what to stay away from, and it's illegal, and they're struggling. So those are some of my comments.
Yeah, for sure. Commissioner Anderson.
The only thing that I would look at in that list of, adult vaping is that they have a viable business, like the vape shops might not have a viable business anymore. Not because of COVID, but because of other regulations that have come about. So I think that's where you have to make sure the business is viable so that they can continue.
Commissioner Kuplick.
Response on viability, that's a very complicated issue. If you're gonna orchestrate somebody, how you prove you're viable, that will really slow down the process, or slow down, like, how you're going to structure it, so.
Yeah.
I'd be caution, I'm just suggesting a bit of caution if you put too many rules and circumstances around these.
Right. I think one of the things as we talk about, discrimination, those types of things, different types of businesses, viability of certain businesses. The first CARES Act bill outlined use of some of the different government programs, and they referenced back to the Small Business Administration has a list of eligible and ineligible businesses, and that was modified slightly with the CARES Act as it was passed. I would encourage us to take a look at that. If federal law is deeming certain businesses ineligible for certain types of funding, I think that would be a good thing to possibly mirror. And it would also streamline the process for those looking to apply. If they were eligible for certain other programs, they'd also be eligible to apply for this one. That might make things a little easier, and administration a little easier.
Commissioner Folkstead, Commissioner LaFever has additional items to add.
Commissioner LaFever.
So I had a couple things. First of all, I believe under the federal guidelines, if you've received an EIDL loan, it's not a grant, it is a loan, it's a low interest loan. The PPP is potentially a grant, yet to be fully determined. But I think that if you had an EIDL loan, you are disqualified from these programs. That is my understanding. The other thing I was going to say is that in the packet that was provided to us, the information, there were a number of different stances people have taken on what's acceptable for funding and what is not. And as you look at that, I really like the deed guidelines. There have been many people that have had these same conversations that we have had, are having again. And rather than reinventing the wheel, in my opinion, because speed is so important right now for these businesses, I really recommend that we go along with the guidelines presented by deed, which also includes business to business. Thank you.
Thank you. If we can have this city research for us, that CARES Act bill, I understand it a little differently than Commissioner LaFever as far as I believe you to be eligible for multiple different CARES Act funding as long as you're not asking for the funding for the same purpose. So if we can take a look at that, that'd be awesome.
Commissioner, that is my understanding as well. This is an allocation to the city. So the city is using their CARES Act to develop a grant program. So I do believe that the EIDL and the PPP programs are categorized differently, and a business would be eligible for a local grant program. I did want to talk really quickly. Oh, Commissioner Claviter has a question, and I do want to talk about a little bit about process, so we can understand what that might look like.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Claviter, go ahead.
This is a grant, you're right, this is a grant developed by the city. The business owners are not expecting this, are not relying on this to get by. We have time. We don't need to rush things. When you rush, you make mistakes. I also don't think we need to mirror or parrot anybody else, because we're smart enough to have a discussion to decide what's best for our local business owners based on what we know their needs are and what some of the feel of the community that we've had for them. Federal guidelines have no feel of our community. I think we need to make our own set of rules, and we need to make it very fluid so we don't miss anybody. Because I feel real terrible for a business owner who was left out and failed simply because we had an oversight or we felt they were left out. If you're a legal business, we should respect that. We should not be nitpicking of who we like and don't like. We're not here to pick winners and losers. We should make it as fluid and open as possible. So this money, it's a gift. We should spread it out as evenly and as fairly as we can.
Commissioner Anderson.
You know, to that point, there's one sentence basically in this presentation that says the funds are to cover expenses related to COVID-19 and also allow for business assistance as well as rent, mortgage, and utility assistance for those adversely affected by COVID-19. And if you take that and just say you can apply for a grant if you have those eligible expenses and not worry about anybody else, you know, whether they got a grant elsewhere, you know, unless they got a grant for those specific things elsewhere. Just focus on that and not worry about a bunch of other conditions that might come up. And you can be home-based, you can be, you know, another type of business facing retail, you know, business to business. You can be if you're, you know, for example, real estate might be affected in the commercial property area, you know, with the COVID-19 because of the value of commercial property has gone down. So there may be all kinds of things, and if they can bring to us and cite what that meet that criteria, then they should be considered.
Commissioner.
Looks like we got a couple of questions from Zoom as well.
Yes.
All right, we'll move in order. I see them on the screen here. So Commissioner Fichette.
Yeah, mine is a clarifying question. I feel like I read somewhere that one of the opportunities to apply for the funding, and I'm not sure if it was the CARES Act money, that had already passed. And so I guess I'm just trying to find out with what Burnsville is trying to put together for funding, grant funding and the CARES Act. Are both dates closed? Will they be reopened to receive more applicants if we don't have enough individuals who apply for those grants? Since if we don't use them, we lose that money.
Perhaps I can speak to that,
Yes,
Commissioner.
City Manager.
We do not know, so there's three different programs. There's the deed program, which closed last week. The county has not rolled out their program yet, and we are rolling out our program. Part of the challenge we have here is there is a sense of urgency with this. We have 4 months for this money to get out the door, or it will go back, and we want it to stay in Burnsville. So, staff's encouragement is to keep things simple. We laid out criteria to get your feedback, to get the council's feedback, and this is incredibly helpful for us. From an administrative standpoint, the county's CDA is looking to hire somebody who would manage this program on their behalf. They have indicated to us that we would be able to fall under their umbrella and have that administration done through the county program. Now, that being said, whatever dollar amount that the city of Burnsville allocates would stay in Burnsville. So we don't have the risk of it ending up at a Lakeville business or an Eagan business. For every criteria that we make that is unique to Burnsville, we have to have somebody that's going to administer the program for us. So we could, again, hire somebody to do that. That's our recommendation from a staff level, is to have somebody manage this program. There's plan development or program development criteria. There's the marketing of it, so our business community knows it's available, knows what the criteria is. There's the application process and review, and it's getting the money out the door. So those are all the steps that we need to consider as we think about the framework that we want to put in place. And unfortunately, November 15th will be here before we know it, as warm as it is today. There's one other thing from an administrative perspective. And one thing we talked about last night with the council is, as we think about this CARES dollars, these $4.7 million, I look at it as this is a rolling budget for us, in a sense that we don't have clear guidance on what some of our expenses are that we can allocate to CARES. And so as we get further guidance, that 4.7 will get allocated. And the city, if the city council and the commission wants to consider a city program that could be separate from the CARES funding, for which whatever criteria the city would like to consider could be developed. So this could be, we could have a program that would take us through November 15th, 2020, but then also consider a future program if that is something that we feel is necessary or important and we have the funds available for it. So there's a couple different things to be thinking about here, but any recommendations that the commission makes today, it's still under development with the additional review that we've been asked to provide, as well as council feedback.
Excellent. I have a question in
Yes.
regards to that, but first we'll defer to Commissioner Schmitz. You've had your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to quickly echo the sense of urgency. People who collected PPP loans, especially the earliest phase, that law meant that they needed to have it all spent within 8 weeks of receiving it, which is long gone from most of the earliest recipients. The EIDL loans funded a little bit later than that, and that is quickly running out for most businesses too. So in addition to the deadline of use it or lose it by November, realistically, businesses do need this money in their hands as quickly as possible. So as much as we can align to, fewer restrictions or limits as to who could consider application seems the best to me to start getting it in the hands of Burnsville business owners.
Definitely. I would agree with that as well. One question I had is we talk about the CARES Act funding, and you talked about different possible independent funding. Is there a possibility that instead of using CARES Act money for these grants, we could just entirely do an independent program, thus not have the time constraints?
Commissioner, I think that is certainly a possibility. What I've shared with the council is, again, I want to make sure we get the money out the door. And with the budget uncertainty that we have going into 2021, if we can have a program that can assist our businesses, we want to try to use those funds. But certainly, we would have that's why I offered, we would have the ability to create our own program.
Okay.
Again, it's a bit of a rolling budget at this point because there is so much uncertainty on the eligible costs. This is one component that could be an eligible cost that we're looking to develop a framework so we could get funds out the door. Whether it's actually CARES dollars out of that bucket or out of a different
Right.
fund balance bucket, we're not prepared to answer that question at this point.
And if I may add, just as part of future discussion with the EDC, one of the things on the work plan is to do an inventory of all the resources that we have available at our fingertips right now that we're using from a business and residential standpoint, and then see where those gaps are compared to other either market cities. And then, it would be at that point your opportunity to say, council, we think it's a good idea to, come up with some program, and we'll look at the parameters of that. Certainly where we have gaps, and then, at that point, we would move forward. But that's to come in September and ongoing discussions with that.
Excellent. One other question I had quick is, with the discussion that was held, locally owned and operated businesses, did they talk about what local ownership meant? Was the business owner have to have their primary residence located within the city of Burnsville and the primary business location also within the city of Burnsville?
The council did not discuss that level of detail.
Okay.
The programs that I've seen, Commissioner, have been the business is based in Burnsville rather than the business owner.
Right, there was a couple of tags on there, so. Commissioner Anderson.
Now, the city can take part of this money for its expenses too, correct?
For administering the program, Commissioner?
No, for its COVID-19 expenses.
Yes, so that's a good clarifying question. The $4.7 million will be used for paying direct expenses related to COVID-19. Right now, when we think about our PPP expenses, our additional cleaning, some of the technology, we're at about $500,000 for that. There are additional expenses beyond that, including payroll. So of the $4.7 million, we're not suggesting that the grant program be $4.7 million. It would be in the range of, the council hasn't decided yet. I heard 100,000 and I heard as high as 500,000. So that's what we're trying to sort through right now.
Okay. As we go through here, just a little bit, just a couple of maybe final
Just
comments or
one-
questions.
Point
Commissioner
of
Kliplick?
clarification on the last, you said the council's thinking 100 to 500 that the city would use or the grant would be?
For a grant program.
So it's only, so they're thinking of like 500,000, so 50 people at 10,000 each.
Yes, that would be the thought, is that there's a $10,000 program with a max, with a cap. Because there are city
Okay.
expenses that relate to the COVID-19
Yeah, oh, no,
pandemic.
good. I
Yeah.
thought we had 4 million to work with, so.
I'm glad we clarified that.
No,
yes.
no,
Yes.
then I would encourage us to keep it as simple as we can, because 50 businesses, they'll be gone and quick. If that's all they're gonna fund, I mean, that's kind of, if they only do 100, I'll just be thoroughly disappointed. I mean, that's 10 people. I mean, that's a lottery.
Dakota County is looking to allocate $10 million for their program. Their parameters are very similar to what we've been talking about tonight with a $10,000 cap.
Yeah, good.
So
So-
there, again, there are a couple different programs
Got it.
that are being discussed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
Excellent. As we wrap this up, are there additional thoughts, additional questions out there? Anything else for the good of this discussion? Oh, Commissioner Cleveter.
How do we plan on getting the word out there to all the businesses? You know, like, I mean, I don't know.
That's a question.
I asked you yesterday if we have a list of all the locally owned businesses in Burnsville. Right.
Assistant Director Dean, I think, had an answer for you, perhaps.
I mean, we're certainly open to the ideas that the commission has. Tools that we currently use today are, we have what we call Opportunity Belongs Here newsletter that people subscribe to, that we would push out the information to, so our social media avenues, our website. And we work closely with the chamber too to help push out information. But there's other ways of getting to businesses, and we're certainly open to any ideas you have as well.
All I'm proposing is that as we discuss how we're going to distribute this money, we should also try to keep our minds open to new ideas of how to get the word out there, because we know people get missed all the time, and this is very important to a lot of people. So we want to make sure they're not just going, oh, I got left out, you know, so.
I would check with the postal service and see if they've got some sort of a program where they can send something to every business within the 2 zip codes.
That's a great idea.
I think we just need to do the best we can. Whether somebody gets a postcard in the mail, or they see it on Twitter, or they get the notification via.
Direct mail
other
would be
means.
able to hit every business for sure.
Yeah, but do you read your direct mail?
Is that?
Do you
If
read
I'm-
your direct mail?
If I get it, growing up in a business owning home, any mail we got that wasn't obviously like pamphlet of a flyer or whatever, yeah, we read if a letter from the city came, for sure, we read it. You don't want to miss anything from the city and end up with a huge fine later on because you threw out a piece of mail from the city, so.
Okay. Excellent. Commissioner Fichette.
Do we know if the Secretary of State is doing anything to reach the businesses? Because since they have to register with them, I'm sorry, the Secretary of State. Do we know if they're doing anything to discuss funds that may be available? Or even obtaining a list from them for the city of Burnsville or Dakota County?
Commissioners, we have not gotten to that level of detail yet. I know that the deed program, they were working with the chambers, they were working with the business community to get the word out. How we would communicate with our local community, to Regina's point, we would try to take as many avenues as possible. Indeed.
Excellent. Good idea. Commissioner Schmitz?
Thank you. I just wanted to add, if there's such a distinction between the money that the county is offering and then the money that gets to the city that then the city is offering, perhaps one of the best ways to get our business owners their best outcomes would be to focus on some sort of an organized way to reach them and help understand not just the Burnsville program and opportunities, but the wider opportunities too. So almost like targeting and helping them push the information and consulting with them on that, rather than we discussed a lot about a consultant to help make sure their business plan is viable and that they use the money in useful ways that set them up for success. Instead, maybe focusing on trying to help them find that money, help the businesses in Burnsville know all the opportunities.
Commissioner, we are working closely with the county on the parameters. We have a very good relationship with the CDA. If they were to be administering it, I would imagine that we would continue to have very close coordination, whether or not our program exactly mimicked theirs or not. We intend to work closely.
Very good. Any other feedback from the commission on this particular discussion item? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 5 on the agenda, Assistant Director Dean is going to talk about business retention and expansion efforts.
Oh, you just need that?
The clicker.
Oh, I was gonna get out of your way.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Either way.
Thank you. So in your background, you have a more detailed report of business retention and expansion, and this is more of an update, kind of an overview. Certainly, if you have any comments or questions, I welcome that. So business retention and expansion, we have not had a formal program, I would say, for years. And this is something new that we really want to kick off and that we want to focus on in our area. Economic development, and I'll be reporting back as time goes on. But I want to go over this sort of 3-pronged approach that we've developed. So number 1 is partnering with the Burnsville Chamber of Commerce to do Grow Minnesota visits, and I'll go into more detail about that. How to reach racially and ethnically diverse businesses, and then something new that's come up because we're trying to go with the times and change, and is COVID-19 outreach. So Grow Minnesota, this is a program through the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, and various chambers, I think there's up to 90, that partner with that partner on programs, and sometimes they partner with cities. They have this opportunity to basically, you meet with businesses within your community. You have a minimum obligation to visit with 24 different businesses. And a survey is provided, which is to capture data on the size of the business, if they have any revenue or losses, if they're seeing pressure to stay in Burnsville or leave in Burnsville and throughout the specific community. What are those challenges? And after that you complete all of these visits, you receive data from the Chamber of Commerce, the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. And that data is collected, analyzed, and ultimately will be reported back to you. So we can learn things like, why did people want to stay in Burnsville? Maybe why did a business leave Burnsville? we also have the opportunity to ask a couple of city-specific questions. And we're asking really how we can partner with businesses. That's one of the questions that we're asking specifically. And if there's any other type of business that would help support their existing business. So is it they're a manufacturing business and maybe a supplier, they really love to have close by and close proximity. You know, maybe this is something that we can, as a city, help attract to move closer to them. This is a program that we have not participated in the past, so we are partnering with the Chamber of Commerce. We'll be, I guess, tagging along with the Chamber to 12 of the visits, and then 12 will be conducted by the Chamber themselves. And we'll see how it goes from here. There's some check-in opportunities to see if we're kind of getting what we want out of it, and just I think it'll just be a great opportunity for us to get in front of these businesses and learn, you know, what needs they have, what challenges they have, and how we can assist them. We'll be out there kind of boots on the ground and be that conduit between the business and, you know, from a city standpoint, you know, what can we offer? And I'm sure we'll find out, you know, maybe we're not, I might be there on a visit, but they might have a question about a road project or something, but we'll be that connection that will help build relationships with the businesses that we have.
I've been a part of Grow Minnesota visits in other municipalities. Do we have any actionable items that we're hoping to find from these visits that we can bring back? Or what is the city should have a couple of goals for these particular things, some action items to take care of on the list, as well as the chamber? And have we thought of what those action items might be yet, or?
So first off, the goal is to start out with some of our top employers, just to check in to see how they're doing. And we also are developing a list of other employers as well. However, I mean, we really just want to see how really a check-in point. We haven't done this in years and years, so I think it'll just be good to get out there and have our, you know, face out there, and you know, we are interested in the specific data that is provided, so that we can learn and share that information, so that you can, when we bring that information back to you, that you can have some solid data to, when you're making your recommendations, really learn from. And you know, this will be new to me and new to others within our organization, but we're just kind of learning.
So Commissioner Cleveter.
Chris is fine too. Is this a subcommittee, or will this be funded or staffed by city employees?
So staff will be attending these visits with the chamber. On the chamber side, they have their ambassador program, and on the chamber side, some ambassadors may be going on some of the visits.
Okay.
Commissioner Anderson, you had a question as well?
I would suggest that you try to find 2 to 4 businesses in that group that have moved out of Burnsville, because that's where you're gonna find out why did they leave, what was missing here. And if you're just talking to people that are here, they probably like what's here.
I think the particular program, the Grow Minnesota program, is supposed to target the businesses that are in the municipality at the time. So it's a good idea for possibly a different type of program, but this particular operates under that, if I understand correctly.
That's my understanding. I believe that's correct.
Any questions from our friends on Zoom?
So far, I'm not seeing any.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay. So the next, I guess, tract in this BR&E, as we call it, Business Retention and Expansion Program, is racially and ethnically diverse business outreach. So, again, something that we haven't necessarily put, I would say, extreme focus on in the past. And so we really want to get out there and speak with people from, other cultures, other, races that may not typically engage through maybe social media or the website or via phone. Sometimes you just have to like physically get out there and talk to people. So a plan is in the works on how to do that and what to do and what that looks like. But we started out with, it's called Tour de Flavor. You'll hear more about this on our social media. But this is kind of I would say our kickoff for the diverse business outreach. So we've got, probably about 30, I would say, just awesome, ethnically diverse cuisines in Burnsville. Many of them are just mom and pop family owned type businesses and just awesome food. And we want to showcase these businesses. And so far, we've had 10 of those businesses commit to participating in this program. So International Festival, which is a great celebration of culture, was canceled due to COVID. And so in place of that, we are kicking off what we call Tour de Flavor. So we'll be working with whoever wants to participate. They'll have a map, and they'll be encouraged to visit not only the 10 businesses that have agreed to participate, but all of our business, kind of culturally, ethnically diverse cuisine type businesses in Burnsville. We will do heavier marketing with the ones that agree to participate. And you'll find out more about that just in the next couple of days as far as specific promotion. But, we started out, we just give you a little history on how we obtained the 10 businesses. Initially, we sent out some emails and got a couple of responses, people saying yes, and phone calls. People are busy, setting up for service. And really, to get like half of those businesses, it took boots on the ground. Like yesterday, I was out driving around, knocking on doors, meeting with people, and having that face-to-face conversation, dropping off information, talking with the managers, talking with the staff, and you should have seen some of the business owners. Yes, just I'm so happy to help. Thank you for thinking about me. Thank you for, for supporting us, and especially during these times, and I'm just so appreciative. So we hope to do more of this. This is just kind of the kickoff of that. So again, more to come. July 18th through the 25th is the actual Tour de Flavor.
How do we get one of those maps? Sorry.
It will be available for release in like 2 days.
Anticipation is building.
I'll make sure to send you all a copy.
Excellent.
And then COVID-19 outreach. So we've had to adjust. Everyone, has had to adjust. And here's what we've done from an economic development standpoint. So we did. Our economic development staff has done specific business call outreach to our businesses, just to see really a friendly check-in. How are you doing? What issues are you seeing? How can we be of service? How can we point, if we don't have the resource for you, what can we do to point you to that resource? So we contacted, I think there were about 30 businesses that we, had specific phone calls with. Of course, we're a small staff, so to kind of squeeze those in and have those meaningful conversations, we probably spend a half an hour with each business. So that takes time, but we had some really, really great conversations. Some of that they asked to be confidential, but I think it was just a good touch point for us to have that understanding. And then also for us to point them to resources, they were appreciative. We also pushed out a survey, and it's actually still live, kind of going around the same type of questions that we're asking through the business calls. What type of issues are you seeing? Are you seeing revenue loss? Are you an essential business? What type of resources do you need? That survey is still live. It's available, I think, till July 17th or 18th. And I think we've had about 20 responses to that, and we've pushed that information out through our Opportunity Belongs Here newsletter, as well as the Chamber's pushed out that as well. We can certainly report back that data that we received, just so you have a better understanding once we close that survey.
Excellent.
We've participated jointly with the Chamber of Commerce in listening sessions, and they had a series where it was hospitality focus and industry focus and small business focus. So the city was at the table just, again, to have an ear to hear what's going on, how people are doing, and just to know what's going on.
Regina, may I add to that? Part of that was a small business sounding board, where Jennifer from the chamber and I helped partner with that and convene that. And we have invited our elected officials there. So we had some of our local elected officials, as well as representative from Angie Craig's office. We invited our state senators and representatives to be simply listening. And we had a set of questions that we asked our businesses. And it was very interesting to hear their feedback about what worked well. Some of it was about the EIDL program or the PPP program, so it was helpful to have Congresswoman Craig's representative there, or Congresswoman Craig's representative there. But then they were also able to talk a little bit about some of the transitions these small businesses needed to make, some of the frustrations they had. It was very helpful for us to hear that. We've been able to connect businesses with each other for kind of resiliency models and sharing information, but it was also good for us to know some of the challenges that they're facing, so we can help kind of navigate and direct them to some resources. So we've conducted 2 of those, and those are broadly open. And then we will have another one coming up here in the next couple weeks. So we're doing the sessions and then a follow-up survey with our businesses, building on the kind of the industry-specific ones that Regina and her team have been doing.
Thank you, Melanie. To share some of these resources, we've pushed out information just via our normal channels, email, social media, our website, our newsletter as well. And then one thing I want to highlight, I should have had a picture, but this restaurant table program, I don't know if any of the commission members heard about it, but this idea actually came from a resident, gave our city staff a call and said, asked the question, what are you doing with the picnic tables that, can normally be rented through our park system, and can those be used for another purpose? Can they be used for businesses to expand their outdoor dining service? Back when the governor's orders were you can only have outdoor dining service, and thought, hey, that's a great idea. Let's see what we can do. So I think we had about 30 tables available that we were able to spread out throughout the community, and I think 5 to 7 restaurants took advantage of that program. Basically, they're free for them to use. Our city staff, Public Works and Parks Department, dropped them off, and they'll be out there till September. So Kazuko, one of our sushi restaurants, what else? El Camino Taco Deli, they're using them. Buzz Cafe, they're using them Fridays, and it's just a great idea spurred by somebody that we said, hey, let's do something. So we put that into action. Again, restaurants were just so appreciative to know that we were thinking of them and that we had this resource available to help them.
Definitely, I think the city staff and the council did a great job as far as a lot of flexibility during that time with our restaurants, with all kinds of things that the alcohol service and those things for outdoor dining, and being very flexible. So that was great. It helped a lot of these businesses, and still does. So excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I had for the business retention and expansion 3-prong approach that we have now. Certainly, if there's any questions or comments or ideas, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, I'll move on.
Anybody have any questions? Any questions on Zoom?
Commissioner LaFever.
Commissioner LaFever?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to comment how impressive that sounds of the active business development efforts that you guys are doing and getting out in the community. I so appreciate that, and it was much needed, and I think it's terrific. I wanted to back up to the ethnic restaurant idea. I think it's a great idea. In our packet, it talked about Experience Burnsville, being a part of that and tapping into their marketing skills to be able to promote that as much as possible. I would encourage us to really encourage that. And I saw that there was a card where people would get it punched as they go from restaurant to restaurant each day, whether it's one or two or however you do that. I thought that was a great idea. I would encourage us to put maybe 500 or 250 for 500 for first and 250 for the second, and have a little contest out of it so that it really motivates people to get involved, especially the younger generations, and it creates some fun. We need some fun these days, and I think it'd be a great idea to put some bounty on that, if you will, in a positive sense, to make that even more fun and get as much turnout for it as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback. We will have awesome prizes. I think they're awesome.
Is it
That's subjective,
Burnsville
I guess.
logo wear? Are we gonna get that?
It's a surprise, but yes.
Okay. There you go. Excellent. Any other questions on that item? Otherwise, we can move on to the last item on our stated agenda here.
So this is just a standing item that we've had for the last probably year now. And just wanted to give you an update on our top 5 priorities in the Economic Development Strategic Plan. And we use this really on a daily basis. The Economic Development Commission helped develop this. Some of you were on the commission at that time, and some it may be new, but this is really what drives a lot of the work that we do. So number 1, ensure sustainability of the Burnsville Shopping Center, County Road 482. I'm going to highlight the good stuff. MWF development, that is still in the works, going through the planning process right now. It's familiar to all of you on the Economic Development Commission, since you were a recommending body on the ELF funding through Dakota County. And so that continues to move along, kind of on the cusp of the, what we call the Center Village or the Burnsville Center area, but on County Road 482, were 2 new businesses, Caribou and Bubble Barn. You'll see Beth here, Beth Weber, she's in our department, with a welcome box. So one of the new things that we're doing as part of the You Belong Here brand is delivering welcome boxes to our new Burnsville businesses. Really, it's a way to showcase and thank people for choosing us. And there's some goodies in there, small tokens like Post-its, pens, a candy jar, and also a thank you note from our city, signed by all of our city council members. And then there's some new businesses. So 5 Below is open now. That's at the Burnsville Marketplace. Opening soon is Sierra Trading Company, and then TJ Maxx and Home Goods will be relocating to that area, and they should be open very soon as well. So it's kind of fun to see some new life in that shopping center.
Definitely. Do we have anything to backfill where TJ Maxx Home Goods is leaving yet, or not yet?
There's some interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We'll learn more. Actually, I'll learn more tomorrow.
Very good.
Speaking of the project. So next up, improve the image of ISD 191 in the city. So I don't have a whole lot to speak on this area, but one of the things that we're working on as a staff and with our partners, not only ISD 191, but the Chamber, Experience Burnsville, and then also our other school districts, since Burnsville has 3 school districts, is coming up with a new resident packet. So if someone were to come to City Hall, we don't really have a takeaway for them if they're a new resident. How do I sign up for cable or water or know my garbage service? There's really nothing to give them as far as an actual takeaway. So the idea is that we'll have some sort of physical packet, resources on our website, And then something to welcome them. So, you know, is that a pot holder or some sort of swag?
Could we, could we include the restaurants who register for Tour de Flavor, a promotional piece for those restaurants in that packet that we give to new residents? Just as another thank you for helping it participate in this thing before.
Yeah, we're certainly open to ideas as this is in development. So I think, you know, anything that we can add, whether it's that as ongoing, something that we just worked on, we can certainly include and highlight.
Well, and you might even be able to get from, whether it's those restaurants or other restaurants, some coupons or something you can put in there that would, you know, get people familiar with the community.
Absolutely, great idea. And then we'll, the idea is that we'll work with our partners as well to help gather that content. Then we want to do something fun. So we have these new apartment buildings in Burnsville. It'd be, when the time comes when we can have some sort of outdoor gathering, it'd be nice to, you know, welcome these new residents, or maybe it's just residents as a whole. We had some ideas as a staff that maybe at fire muster or another type of event that we could have like a special section for new residents that they can come and meet one another and engage, and maybe it's they can enjoy hot dog, one free hot dog or something. Somehow to get people to feel like they made a good decision choosing Burnsville to live and call home. So that's in the works. Kind of fun stuff. The next item, continued development within heart of the city. So the transit-oriented development ordinance that you were part of developing, that was approved by City Council. The Maven Apartments are now open. That was a EDA-owned property, as some of you may remember and may have recommended to approval for. That's open. Gallery on the Parkway, another apartment building, will be open soon. And then the Orange Line bus rapid transit stations, we have received the station building plans in. So they'll be under construction, likely sometime late summer, early fall. And then the bus rapid transit will be ready to ride in late 2021. Enhance and build awareness around commercial programs. I think in your background it said that you would have an update today. Due to some staffing changes, we've pushed this to September, where you will receive basically an inventory or a matrix of the programs that we have available. And I talked a little bit about this earlier. And then we'll use that to see, okay, what do other cities do and where are the gaps? And with hopes that we can have some sort of program, and maybe the CARES funding is sort of a pilot, and then, it's another idea that we transition to something. But more to come on that. Something that we've been working on behind the scenes. Continue the city's position as a regional destination, and these are just kind of random fun things to talk about. So placemaking, the idea of placemaking means a lot of things to a lot of people. Like, what is placemaking? You guys are probably thinking. It can be a piece of art. It can be a piece of interactive art. It can just be like a cool space where you just want to be and hang out with friends. Some people will consider the park and heart of the city as a great placemaking space because we've got that cool water feature, and we have programmed events where people can you listen to music, and it just has cool lighting and atmosphere.
I want to strongly suggest that if we're going to put placemaking somewhere, we do it right out here at the skate park using the wall for a mural and the existing open area. That skate park is a regional destination that goes beyond the state. There's people who come from Iowa, the Dakotas, just for that park.
I think that was actually just a little background history. The Convention Bureau actually wanted to do some sort of mural there. And I think they were working towards funding, and they were going to do something for I think it was like their 20th anniversary. And it didn't quite pan out, but that's a great idea.
You got to be careful, though, with who gets the mural out there, because it could ruin the park if it goes in the wrong artist. We can discuss that later.
But placemaking, there's going to be some sort of placemaking feature at the fire station. And that's what we're working towards right now. There will be some sort of feature on the wall and some sort of landscape type feature. We're gonna engage with the public. I'm sure our commissions will be asked to be involved in some aspect, as well as our other, all of our commissions, all of our people that are actively engaged. And so that's underway. We currently have interviewed consultants. Ultimately, we'll be working on a contract for the consultant that staff's vetted and selected. So more to come on that. We talked about Tour de Flavor. Grow Minnesota visits are underway, which we talked about. And then this You Belong Here song contest. So one of the fun things that we've done is partnered with the Garage across the street. And ultimately, the winner of the song contest, entries, musicians, whoever wanted to enter, needed to include the words Burnsville and You Belong Here in a song. We received 9 entries. Those entries will be narrowed down to 3, which will be voted on by popular vote. So you'll see more on that on our normal communication vehicles. And the winner will receive $500 and a professional recording at the Garage. And with that contest, we have the rights to all of the songs, so we can use them in different ways. They're awesome. Like when you hear the top 3, they were just all incredible. So be on the lookout for that and share with your friends when voting becomes available to the public.
Going back to the fire station for a second, don't eliminate putting some of the stuff at the existing fire station over by the Dairy Queen. I've walked by there a lot of times, and there's lots of space that you could do some work in the front of that with.
Comment. We have an internal placemaking committee, and we're it's kind of the new buzzword in local government. So we're looking at ideas, thinking of ideas, and thank you for sharing, because we're excited to integrate some of this into the things that we do.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, that's all I have. Certainly if there's any questions, I don't see any right now online.
Any questions, Commissioner Anderson?
You had talked about, I can't remember if it was our last meeting, but you were marketing the land that was once going to be a fire station. Is there any activity on any city-owned land?
So I can speak to that. So we currently have that listed as an RFP. So developers, whoever's interested is asked to submit proposals by July 21st. That will ultimately be before you, assuming that we receive RFPs. We had, I think, 7 to 11 just letters of interest of people initially interested in the property. And we have a city policy that says if one person's interested in the property, the city can negotiate a land sale with them, and it's based off of an appraisal, and they basically pay the appraisal price. Or if multiple people are interested in the property, that you need to go through an RFP process. So, like I said, 7 to 11 people, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, were interested in the property. They submitted letters of interest. So given that, we're now going through the RFP process. So you will be, once we receive those, again, assuming that we receive actual submittals, which there has been strong interest, we'll come to you for a recommendation. I don't know if anyone has questions at all.
Yeah.
Or these are old, they might be old notifications.
Any other comments or questions from the commission as we wrap up here? All right, seeing none, Commissioner Fichette, question?
No question, just a comment. It sounds like there's a lot of fun and exciting things happening in Burnsville. I'm really excited to hear that there was some headway made with going out to the businesses and just checking in with them to see how they're doing with COVID-19, because I wondered, how are they really feeling out there? So it's good to know that someone was talking to the businesses and getting some feedback about what their needs were. So that's all.
Excellent. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And we'll do roll call.
Second.
All right, roll call. So,
Commissioner Folkstead,
aye?
Commissioner Kuplick,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Cleveter,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmitz,
Aye.
Commissioner LaFever,
Aye.
Commissioner Fitchett.
Aye.
All right, with that, the ayes have it, and we are adjourned at 7:55. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good
Have a
meeting.
good evening.